Greetings fans, friends, and family. Your crafty diva cat here with another finished work in progress this time. Has there ever been something that you really wanted to do a few years ago and never got around to, and then kind of think you're a little out of date for it and maybe shouldn't do it anymore? That's how I felt about ponchos. I really didn't have the time to make them when they were really popular a few years ago, and so I never did. And now that I have a little more time to devote to my crafting, I thought, well, that trend is kind of a little passé now. I don't know if I should do a poncho. And I thought, well, you know what? I've never been one to be spot on trend. I like making my own way, so I might as well do it. So the pattern I picked was the one that inspired the whole poncho craze to begin with, and that is Martha Stewart's Coming Home Poncho. I found the pattern on the Lion Brand yarn site, where it comes in regular sizes, plus sizes, and even in a kids version, a knit version. I think there was a version for dogs. They have just about every version of this poncho on that site. And I'll tell you why, because anybody can do this pattern and do it really fast. It took me a total of 4 nights to make this all together, and it is a fabulous project. It's super simple. If you know how to make a granny square, or even if you don't starting out, you can absolutely make this poncho. It makes up in a bulky weight yarn. The pattern actually calls for homespun yarn, which I'm a big fan of, but I had some yarn from somewhere else that I wanted to use up, and I'll get to that yarn in a second. Not a big fan of it. And it was in this beautiful royal purple color, which is one of my favorite colors ever. And so I decided to give it a go. And it looks absolutely fabulous in a solid color rather than in the homespun. I oftentimes don't like yarns that have a lot of stuff going on in them unless it's a super simple pattern, just straight across rows or something like that, because I think it distracts from your crochet work. And this looked so elaborate when I was looking at the piece that I thought a solid color would work well. Well, it's actually super simple. All of the work till you get to the edging is just the little same clusters of 3 double crochet that you do whenever you're making a granny square. So super simple, super easy to do. There's a beautiful edging around the bottom in shells that is a little bit more complicated, and I will admit that it took me a full night to do all this. It took me 3 nights to do the whole body of the poncho and another separate night working on the edging to do the edging, which isn't too bad actually. It's just time that I would be watching TV with my husband anyway. I cannot sit still and watch something like a movie or anything on TV. I have to have something in my hands to work on. And this was what I worked on for a few different nights with my husband. So this super simple shell edging involves just chain stitches and more double crochets. You don't have to know a ton of stitches to do this, but there are some places where the directions are a little confusing. Underneath the pattern, you'll see a Q&A where they answer some of the problems other people have had with the directions. If you're new to crochet, I would suggest you give it a read through before you tackle the pattern. I didn't read it before I started. I didn't have really any problems, although there were some places when I was reading the pattern that I went, they worded that really weird. And when I read the questions and answers afterwards, I realized that's where they clarified all the stuff that they worded in a very strange way. So if you start this pattern and you feel like you're going a little crazy reading the directions, that's okay. Go scroll down and read the Q&A. Now on to the yarn that I used. I got this yarn on sale from a place that I shop at online really often, Hirschner's. And this is the Hirschner's brand chunky yarn that came in the beautiful royal purple. I am never going to buy this yarn again. Never. I wouldn't suggest anyone buy this yarn again. I love you, Hirschner's. I love your customer service. You guys are great. But this particular yarn, it's just awful. You know how you get those flaws when you're working with your yarn where you've got 2 pieces that are knotted together and you know it reached an end and they just fastened on the next start? That happens to me if I'm making something. Maybe one of the skeins of yarn will have that in it. Maybe 2 will have it one time in the yarn. Every single skein that I got of this had that at least once, and the worst one had 5 flaws where it was tied together. I don't know if that means that my shawl is going to fall apart as I start to wear it because it's so weak that it just breaks, but I was not happy, let me tell you. The other thing is, with a pull skein of yarn, we're used to the whole untuck the end from this side and pop it out from the other side and start pulling, right? Well, in the Hirschner's yarn, it's not just a little bit that's tucked into one end. It was all of that, okay? And when you're pulling it out, it's knotting with the stuff on the other end. So you sometimes are going to pull your end out, and then it's not going to pull nicely, and you're going to have to pull the whole thing from the outside, wind it into a ball, and use it that way. I know a lot of people rewind their skeins into balls anyway when they're working with them. Personally, I love pull skeins because you don't have to do that. But with this yarn, about half the balls I did have to do that with because they were just such a wreck inside and so tangled up with this incredibly long end that was tucked in. So I hate to say it, this was a yarn discovery that gets an absolute thumbs down from me. And that's how you know I'm being honest. I'll tell you when I love something, but I'll also tell you when I hate it. And I just hated this yarn. Not worth it. You can get it cheap, but you know what you get, what you pay for in this instance. It's not worth the time and the aggravation of hiding all your broken ends when you're working, trying to weave in all these extra ends from the flaws in the yarn. It's just not worth it. But the pattern, absolutely go for it. Buy a nice line brand yarn and maybe you won't have the trouble that I had with this. Anyways, the pattern, thumbs up, the yarn, thumbs down. And for more tips, tricks, techniques, and projects on crochet and other crafts, check out Crafty Diva Cat on Facebook and Twitter. And as always, happy crafting.